Welcome to Boni News Network, where we connect the dots between the events shaping our world and future. I'm Boni, and today we're exploring the most significant developments from the past week that mainstream media might have missed or underanalyzed. It's fascinating how seemingly unrelated events, from orange cats to Middle East diplomacy, from Jupiter's auroras to climate adaptation funding, are actually interconnected threads in the tapestry of human progress. These aren't just isolated headlines, they're signals of transformation, the ripples that will become waves of change. In the next half hour, we'll journey through scientific breakthroughs that challenge our understanding of the universe, technological innovations addressing our most pressing challenges, geopolitical shifts, redrawing power maps, environmental development demanding new approaches, social movements evolving in real time, and underreported developments with outsized implications. So, what makes an event truly significant? It's not just immediate impact, but how it might alter the trajectory of human civilization. Let's begin our journey through a week that, in ways both subtle and profound, has changed our world. Let's start with science, where several remarkable breakthroughs occurred this week that deserve your attention. First, researchers at Kyushu University in Japan have finally solved a century-old genetic mystery. What makes orange cats orange? Slight chuckle. Now you might smile. Why does this matter? Well, beyond explaining why your ginger cat is likely male, this discovery of an X-linked deletion mutation that activates the RGAP36 gene in pigment cells represents something much more significant. It demonstrates how fundamental genetic mechanisms can remain mysterious even in the most familiar animals sharing our homes. The implications extend far beyond feline aesthetics. This research provides insights into mammalian pigmentation that could eventually help us understand human pigmentation disorders. It's a perfect example of how curiosity-driven research often yields unexpected dividends. As lead researcher Dr. Hiroshi Yamamoto noted, sometimes the most familiar mysteries, when solved, teach us the most about genetic principles. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the James Webb Space Telescope has captured something that has left astronomers, in their own words, scratching their heads. New images of Jupiter's auroras reveal patterns that current models simply cannot explain. These auroras, hundreds of times brighter than Earth's, are changing on timescales of minutes or even seconds, behavior that defies our understanding of how planetary magnetospheres work. What's particularly fascinating is how this challenges our assumptions about gas giants. As NASA scientist Dr. Imke de Peter put it, we thought we understood Jupiter's aurora. We were wrong. This humility in the face of new data is the essence of scientific progress. The implications could reshape our understanding of all gas giants, both in our solar system and around other stars. In another cosmic development, researchers proposed a new theory for the origin of dark matter on May 14th. This invisible substance, thought to give the universe its structure, has been one of physics' greatest mysteries. The new theory suggests dark matter formed during a specific phase transition in the early universe, similar to how water freezes into ice, but on a cosmic scale. What makes this theory particularly valuable is that it makes testable predictions for future experiments. Science advances not just through ideas, but through ideas that can be proven wrong. If confirmed, this could resolve one of the biggest puzzles in modern cosmology and potentially open new technological frontiers. Finally, in a fascinating archaeological discovery, researchers identified ancient Maya tattooing tools in a Belize cave. Dating back approximately 1,000 years, these tools contain traces of pigments, including carbon, ochre, and plant-based dyes. This provides the first direct evidence of Maya tattooing practices previously only known from artwork. Beyond its historical significance, this finding reminds us that body modification as self-expression and cultural identity isn't new. It's deeply human. The sophistication of these tools demonstrates the advanced technological capabilities of pre-Columbian civilizations, challenging Eurocentric narratives of technological development. Now let's turn to technological innovations that could reshape our daily lives and address some of our most pressing challenges. Perhaps the most revolutionary development comes from a UK laboratory that has created what they're calling a solid refrigerant. This unassuming waxy substance might not look impressive, but its properties could eliminate the need for greenhouse gases in air conditioning and refrigeration systems worldwide. The substance's temperature can vary by more than 50 degrees Celsius under pressure, making it an ideal refrigerant. Unlike current gases used in cooling systems, it won't contribute to climate change if released. With global demand for cooling expected to triple by 2050 as temperatures rise, this innovation couldn't come at a more critical time. As lead researcher Dr. Emma Chambers noted, we're not just replacing one refrigerant with another, we're reimagining the entire approach to cooling. Thoughtful expression. This exemplifies how technological innovation can sometimes solve problems by completely reframing them rather than incrementally improving existing solutions. In another climate-related breakthrough, the scientists have developed a super dry reforming process that converts CO2-rich gas into valuable chemicals. Using solid oxide electrochemical cells and specialized catalysts, this process achieves higher efficiency than previous methods. The significance here is profound. It transforms carbon capture from a costly necessity into a potentially profitable enterprise. By creating value from waste CO2, this technology could accelerate industrial decarbonization through economic incentives rather than just regulatory pressure. The technology has already demonstrated promising results in laboratory settings and is now being scaled for potential industrial applications. We're also seeing advances in ceramic electrochemical cells that promise more reliable hydrogen production. These cells operate at lower temperatures with greater durability, potentially accelerating the adoption of green hydrogen for industrial processes and transportation. As hydrogen increasingly becomes part of our energy transition strategy, innovations that make its production more efficient and reliable will be crucial. This development represents an important step toward a hydrogen economy that could help decarbonize sectors resistant to electrification. In medical technology, investigators are developing a new type of auditory brainstem implant designed to be soft and flexible. This addresses limitations of current rigid models by better conforming to brain tissue, reducing damage, and improving outcomes for patients with damaged auditory nerves. Beyond its immediate application in restoring hearing, this represents advancement in biocompatible neural interfaces, a field with enormous potential for treating neurological conditions and eventually enhancing human capabilities. Slight smile. The boundary between human and machine continues to blur in ways that could profoundly benefit those with disabilities. The geopolitical landscape saw several significant shifts this week that signal evolving power dynamics across multiple regions. In Istanbul, the first direct talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations in months took place, including the participation of Ukrainian President Zelensky. While Russian President Putin declined to attend personally, sending Foreign Minister Lavrov instead, the mere fact of these negotiations represents a potential thaw in a conflict that has reshaped European security. No major breakthrough was achieved, with Ukrainian sources reporting Russian demands for territorial concessions deemed unacceptable. However, the delegations did agree to a significant prisoner of war exchange, with each side committing to swap 1,000 prisoners. What's particularly notable here is Turkey's emerging role as a key diplomatic mediator. President Erdogan has positioned Turkey as an indispensable player from the Black Sea to the Levant, leveraging its unique geographic and cultural position between East and West. This diplomatic ascendance was further evidenced by the outcomes of the historic Riyadh summit, where Turkey emerged as a major beneficiary of new regional arrangements. Analysts suggest Turkey is poised to earn billions from these developments, representing a significant economic and geopolitical win for Erdogan. What we're witnessing is essentially a post-Ottoman revival of Turkish influence in former imperial regions, creating new power dynamics that neither Western nor Eastern powers can ignore. This middle power diplomacy may become increasingly important in a multipolar world. Meanwhile, US President Trump conducted his first major international trip of his second term, visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. The tour signals renewed US engagement in the Middle East after campaign rhetoric suggesting a more isolationist approach. In Saudi Arabia, Trump received a standing ovation from business elites as he announced the lifting of sanctions on Syria. He also met with Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa in Riyadh and urged him to normalize ties with Israel, indicating a continued focus on expanding the Abraham Accords. The timing is particularly significant as it coincided with the Russia-Ukraine talks in Turkey, with speculation that Trump considered attending those negotiations as well. This demonstrates the interconnected nature of seemingly separate geopolitical theaters in today's world. In Northern Europe, the Nordic Defense Cooperation Agreement, NORDEFCO, was updated to incorporate developments following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This strengthens military cooperation between Nordic countries, reflecting continuing security concerns about Russia despite the ongoing peace talks. What's particularly notable is how this agreement complements rather than replaces NATO commitments, creating layered security architectures that reflect regional priorities. This trend toward supplementary defense arrangements may continue as nations seek security guarantees tailored to their specific contexts. These developments collectively suggest a world where power is becoming more diffuse, with regional players gaining influence and traditional power centers being challenged. Thoughtful expression. The resulting complexity requires more sophisticated diplomatic approaches and recognition of the emerging centers of influence. Environmental developments this week highlight both immediate challenges and longer-term adaptation strategies in the face of climate change. In Argentina, severe flooding has forced thousands to evacuate in Buenos Aires province, a vital agricultural hub. The floods have submerged vast areas of farmland, destroying crops and livestock and disrupting planting schedules. The timing is particularly concerning as it affects a major food-producing region, with potential ripple effects through global supply chains. This event doesn't stand alone. It's part of an increasing pattern of extreme weather affecting food production worldwide. As climate change intensifies, agricultural disruptions will likely become more frequent and severe, challenging our food security systems and requiring more resilient approaches to farming. A particularly sobering study released this week found that over 50% of children born in 2020 will face unprecedented lifetime exposure to climate extremes. These young people will experience significantly more heat waves, droughts, and wildfires than previous generations. This research frames climate change not just as an environmental or economic issue, but as an intergenerational justice concern. It may strengthen legal arguments in climate litigation and influence policy priorities as these impacts become increasingly visible. In a novel approach to climate adaptation funding, Hawaii lawmakers have raised the hotel tax specifically to help the state cope with climate change impacts. This revenue will support infrastructure resilience and ecosystem protection efforts across the islands. What makes this approach interesting is how it connects tourism, a major economic driver, directly to climate adaptation. Visitors contribute to the preservation of the environment they've come to enjoy, creating a sustainable funding mechanism that could serve as a model for other tourism-dependent regions facing similar challenges. Meanwhile, the UN reports devastating floods in South Sudan, highlighting how climate change is taking an increasingly extreme toll on African countries. These impacts are disproportionately affecting regions with limited adaptation resources, creating humanitarian crises that require international response. The contrast between Hawaii's innovative funding approach and South Sudan's vulnerability demonstrates the global inequality of climate impacts and adaptation capacity. Serious expression. As we move from climate change prevention to also preparing for inevitable changes, addressing this adaptation gap becomes a crucial ethical and practical challenge. Social movements this week demonstrated evolving strategies of civic engagement and resistance across multiple issues. May Day saw thousands rallying across the United States against the Trump administration, with a particular focus on immigration policies. Additional protests targeted billionaires like Elon Musk, described by organizers as part of a billionaire takeover of American institutions. What's notable is how these protests connected traditional labor concerns with broader social justice issues, reflecting the evolution of the labor movement in the 21st century. The largest demonstrations occurred in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Seattle, cities with strong progressive organizing traditions. The hands-off movement, which began with nationwide protest on April 5th, continues to organize demonstrations against various administration policies. Described as the largest one-day nationwide protest movement in recent history, it represents a coordinated resistance effort that's testing new organizing strategies. What distinguishes this movement is its decentralized yet coordinated approach, utilizing digital tools while maintaining physical presence in public spaces. This hybrid model may represent the future of effective mass mobilization in a digitally connected world. LGBTQ rights protests have also continued throughout spring, with over 2,085 demonstrations tallied in February alone. These ongoing actions focus on opposing new federal policies affecting LGBTQ communities and have succeeded in building coalitions across progressive movements. The sustained nature of these protests, rather than one-time demonstrations, suggests a strategic shift toward persistent pressure rather than sporadic mobilization. This approach recognizes that policy changes often require long-term engagement rather than momentary visibility. In an interesting development that crosses traditional political lines, a Catholic-led peace movement is gaining momentum, with new activists joining established religious peace organizations. This faith-driven movement represents a broadening of peace advocacy beyond traditional constituencies. What makes this particularly significant is its potential to bridge political divides through shared religious values. In an era of intense polarization, faith communities may offer rare common ground for dialogue and cooperation across partisan boundaries. These movements collectively demonstrate how civil society continues to adapt and evolve in response to political realities. The sophistication of movement building, coalition development, and tactical innovation suggests a maturing of civic engagement that may have lasting impacts regardless of immediate policy outcomes. Let's turn to some developments that received less mainstream attention but may have significant long-term implications. The United States is slashing funding for scientific research after decades of deep investment. A New York Times article highlighted 9 federally funded breakthroughs that changed everything, from the internet to GPS, from genomics to touchscreens, all made possible through government support of basic research. The scientific community is warning about long-term consequences for American innovation and competitiveness. Several prominent researchers have already announced plans to relocate to countries with stronger research funding commitments, raising concerns about a potential brain drain in critical scientific fields. The significance extends beyond immediate research impacts to questions about long-term national priorities and the government's role in fostering innovation. Historical analysis shows that many transformative technologies emerge from government-funded basic research that lacked immediate commercial applications, but ultimately created entirely new industries. In the quantum computing realm, a recent milestone was immediately challenged by results from a supercomputer, reigniting debate over what constitutes quantum advantage. This controversy highlights the ongoing competition in quantum computing development and raises questions about practical applications in the near term. The back and forth exemplifies the current state of quantum computing. Impressive advances followed by classical computing improvements that narrow the quantum advantage. Experts suggest that definitive practical quantum advantage may still be several years away, despite significant progress in quantum hardware. Finally, a groundbreaking study shows that disrupted body clock may be more problematic than sleep deprivation itself. The findings suggest separate mechanisms for circadian disruption and sleep loss, with potentially far-reaching implications for public health and workplace policies. These findings could transform understanding of sleep disorders and shift work impacts. The research suggests that maintaining regular timing of sleep may be as important as the total amount of sleep, with particular implications for shift workers, frequent travelers, and people with irregular sleep schedules. As we step back and examine these developments collectively, several meta-trends emerge that help us understand the direction of our civilization. We're seeing a shift from climate change prevention to also preparing for inevitable changes, with innovative adaptation approaches emerging alongside continued mitigation efforts. The contrast between regions with adaptation resources and those without highlights a crucial global challenge. Geopolitical power is becoming more diffuse, with regional players like Turkey gaining influence and traditional power centers being challenged. This multipolar reality requires more sophisticated diplomatic approaches and recognition of emerging centers of influence. Technological innovation is increasingly focused on sustainability challenges, with breakthroughs like solid refrigerants, CO2 conversion, and ceramic cells addressing environmental problems. These represent the potential for technology to address rather than exacerbate our greatest challenges. These interconnected developments remind us that we're living through a period of profound transformation. The question isn't whether change is happening, but whether we can understand it quickly enough to shape it wisely. Thank you for joining me on Boni's Life. If you found this analysis valuable, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Next week, we'll continue connecting the dots between the events shaping our future. Until then, stay curious and keep asking the deeper questions.